You could hear the grinding of the motors. You could hear the sound of the music. All of a sudden, they pop up over this huge berm and just come rolling past. And I was out in the field with the gentleman who had let me the camera. And very quickly, we learned that we had to be ready to just grab the equipment and just get the hell out of the way, because they weren't going to stop.
My guest today is more than a dear friend of over 40 years. She's also a trailblazing storyteller. Gail McCabe is the executive director of Creative Media Matters in Atlanta, where she runs a powerhouse one-woman video production company working with the VA, CDC, HHS, and veterans organizations.
I went from Los Angeles to a town that had one traffic light and was known for its tanks and mortars. You know, it doesn't matter the color of your skin. Everyone has a voice.
Oh boy. So how is Gail today?
I'm okay. I went out and had Caribbean, Jamaican food last night with my neighbors. And so came home, and the first thing both of us did was take the heartburn pill.
Oh, you were feeling it right away.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And it was like right down the street. So we walked home. It took us like 10, 15 minutes to walk home, thinking that would help. But the first thing we both did was go get the pill, glass of water, that helped.
A little Pepto here and there, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
So did you suffer any consequences after you took the
reflux pill? No. It worked well. We stayed up and watched a TV show for a couple hours.
Which one?
What is it called? Terminal List. I think it's a new one that's out on Amazon. Very well done. All about a special ops team, Navy SEAL in Afghanistan. And turns out that he was used as a biological experiment by his command. And right now we're thinking also by the Secretary of Defense. But there's one more episode to go, so we'll find out.
Oh, is that sort of similar to the old CIA testing with the LSD of the various different soldiers?
Yeah.
What did they call that? Was that the Manhattan Project, or I forget the name of it, but it was something like that, right?
Didn't the Manhattan Project go back to I think it went back before that, but I might be wrong. I'm not good. I couldn't tell you for sure. I'd have to Google it.
So, it's very, I'm good too, the end of the summer kind of slipping into the fall, which is my favorite season. Which is yours?
I like spring and early summer. I got born in the summer.
Early summer doesn't count.
Yeah. So, but this time of year is also very nice, and we always tend to take our vacations in late November, December, and then again, early part of the year for whatever reason.
When you do holiday, where do you go normally?
Different places. We like to go to places where we can go scuba diving, because we like to scuba dive. And places that have craft fairs or flea markets, because we like to rent a car, drive around. We're not tour people. And go find, the little flea market. Because for me, that's where you really get the insight into the country, the people, the culture, when you can do stuff like that.
Yeah, the only problem with flea markets in a lot of places around the world is that they sell a lot of schlock and souvenir type stuff. So it's hard to kind of suss out where you're going to go to get the good stuff, the genuine article.
Well, even in Hawaii, when we went to the flea market there in Hawaii, there was a lot of schlock, a lot of new stuff, but there were the one or two little tables that had some genuine stuff, mostly food things, but that was pretty good.
Right.
And it's the people watching.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's good everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah. We went to one in Arizona when we were there last, outside of, North Phoenix, I think it was. Not quite Green Valley and Bell Road, but off in that area. And a lot of really cool handcrafted folks that would be selling their stuff on Etsy, that kind of thing. Clothing, food, hanging stuff, the little wind chimes. So that was fun. That was kind of cool.
You bring up an interesting thought. As far as like the people who sell on Etsy, are they selling authentic gear and products and designs?
Good question. Just so happens that I bought a T-shirt for the nephew. Yeah, the nephew who's having a surprise 30th birthday next week. So his favorite thing is he likes beer and wings. So he said, okay, we'll get him a T-shirt that says beer and wings. So I went to Etsy, found a guy that sells T-shirts that say beer and wings. ordered it, got the wrong color, called him, sent him a message. He says, I'm very apologetic, sends me a new one. He says, I guess the printers got it wrong. So that is where my mind went. Isn't this your company? But I'm thinking a lot of them set up and subcontract.
What do they call that? Drop shipping or something, where you as the customer, you make an order, you come to the middleman, and then I go ahead and I get in the way of a little bit of the money and I order your product.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we call it entrepreneurship. Yeah.
It's so wrong.
It's
You brought up at the top of the show, like what a crazy week this has been and just what's going on in the media and so on. Now, you and I grew up in Hollywood in the 80s, and you got into eventually, for the last 30 years, you've been working with the military, Department of Defense, the Army, and stuff like that. Now, we were kind of progressive, young, interesting people. So for you to get involved with the military in the capacity that you did seemed a little bit interesting of a choice. Tell me why you ended up working with them. Was it because it was available work where you were at, or it was just a way for you to spread your creative endeavors?
I'll take the first answer. It was the Army was the only one that was hiring Americans who could speak English, because I was in Germany. I did not speak German.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that was the only place to look for work. And the first place that we lived was such a remote little town. I mean, I went from Los Angeles to a town that had one traffic light and was known for its tanks and mortars. And that was the only place I could find a job. And that was marketing the community.
Right.
Going around, putting up posters and writing little ads and trying to promote the football games, the baseball games, the officers' wives' bazaars. Very, very, very little community, maybe 2,000 people. So everybody knew everybody's business. And so that was different. That was very different.
So you got into a career doing your video specialties for the Army, Department of Defense, and so on. And you covered some really interesting stories all over the world. Is something popping into mind right now that you thought was very vital at the time when you were able to present it?
You mean back when I first started?
Yeah.
Or just... Yeah, well, back when I first started, I was just so thrilled to be able to do it that any story was great. But yes, I went down to Crete for the very first test firing of the Patriot missiles. And at that time, I had no idea what a Patriot missile was or what it would sound like or look like or anything like that. So that was an eye-opener in itself. And I did a lot of community stories because at that time, there were 500,000 Americans that were living in Germany, part of the military footprint, uniform, their families, their children. We had our own school system. We had our own health clinics. We had our own grocery stores. We had our own little Circle Ks that they called shopettes. We bought vehicles that the Germans would not license because they didn't have enough catalytic converters and rust protection, but they could sell them to the Americans because the American standards were not as high as the Germans. So that was kind of cool. I got to drive a Mercedes and a BMW and things I certainly couldn't afford on my own back here in the States.
Mm-hmm.
But lots of good stories.
So you began your career doing video work. Was that something that you had specialty or experience in prior to working in Germany for Department of Defense and Army? Was that something you were comfortable with, or did you learn on the fly?
I learned on the fly. I literally kind of fell into it. As you know, I worked in the recording studios back in Hollywood, so I had the deeper understanding of audio and how audio worked. And I used that when I got to Germany and discovered that they had American Forces Network radio station that was a 45-minute drive away. So I volunteered to be their broadcaster on air and interview people to talk about the community, hence the marketing. And I did that for a while. And then one day I was out and they had a division of the Army that was all about documentation, visual information. And there was a sergeant there who saw me looking at the equipment. I was just kind of like, what is that? What's that? Oh, that's cool. What is that? And so he had an extra one and he let me check it out over the weekend. And so got there and tore the whole thing apart, read the manual, page 1 to page 190, did every possible thing I could think of. I was in love. I was fascinated. And I went back and he let me keep the camera as long as I did coverage of our community the training, the community, and then I would send it off to American Forces Network, which was based in Frankfurt, 4 hours away, and they would air it. And that's how it all started. I mean, literally. My first shot with him was out in the tank gunnery field, and they were having what was called the CAT competition, Canadian Army Trophy Competition. So you would have all of the allies, and I think at that time it was Canada, Britain. They had Norway was there, the U.S. was there, the Germans were there. They had some, Belgium, Dutch, and they all had their version of tanks. And so everybody would line up, and it was like watching the Kentucky Derby, but only with big, huge steel behemoths instead of horses. And somebody would like shoot a gun, and they'd be off. And their whole goal was to go around, targets would pop up, they would have to shoot the target, then turn around and come back, target number 2, target number 3, all of that. And the winner was the one who got the most accurate shooting in the best time. And of course, being soldiers, every tank had its rallying song that they were playing on speakers that they taped to the outside of the tank. And I think it was Sylvester Stallone song from Rocky.
Eye of the Tiger.
Eye of the Tiger that the Americans were playing, and you could hear it coming over. You couldn't even see them. You could hear the grinding of the motors. You could hear the sound of the music. All of a sudden, they pop up over this huge berm and just come rolling past. And I was out in the field with the gentleman who had lent me the camera, and very quickly we learned that we had to be ready to just grab the equipment and just get the hell out of the way, because they weren't going to stop. And but that was very exciting. Very.
It's interesting. We both, as we mentioned at the top, we both come from Hollywood, and you were working in rock and roll. And how does a girl from Hollywood working in rock and roll develop a taste for the military machine and explosions and guns and things like that? And of course, the way that they present themselves. Was that something that you really had to overcome to be able to enjoy and understand?
Good question. I came from another world, but I will say that I learned very quickly that prima donnas are prima donnas, whether they have long hair and play guitars in the studio, or they're wearing uniforms and they're leading a squad or a platoon of soldiers. Everybody is knowledgeable in what they do. They want to be recognized for what they do. And they all, it's going to sound tacky, but they all kind of respond to somebody recognizing and complimenting them on what they do. So, I mean, that's human nature. We all do that. But it was an adrenaline rush and you very quickly, at least I very quickly got smart on the fact that now this was before the wall came down. So we're at the very end of the Cold War. So that we had an actual enemy that was, in my case, this place in Germany was less than 50 miles away. And so the preparations, the being ready to combat the USSR was very real.
So you bought into that, and you actually kind of built a desire to understand what the machine was all about, what the United States was all about. So it's something that you became a fan of?
I became a fan of the commitment and the camaraderie that you see in the uniformed forces, the training that takes place, the brotherhood, I guess you would say, because everybody's got everybody else's back, and they know that. And it was a world that I enjoyed in that, to our favorite word today, it was very diverse. Nobody cared what your religion was, what your color was,
what your political standing was.
Gender took a while, but as long as you could do the job and you had my back, then we're good to go.
So you were I'm sorry.
No, it was great. It was really great.
I was going to ask you if you were a civilian employee of the Army, and if so, was there during those years times where Army officials wanted to kind of get you to sign up?
To join the Army?
Yeah.
No, I think they recognized very quickly that I was not good at taking orders. No. And by that time, I was already in my 30s. And so they want, if you're going to be a new recruit, you got to be in your 20s. Oh. You really do. I mean, you can join in your 30s, but nah, I didn't want to go there.
Right.
I didn't want to go there. And I asked a lot of questions that they were not Yeah. If I were in uniform, I would not have been allowed to ask the questions that I asked.
Right. It would have been some sort of a violation.
Yeah, because when they give you an order, you have to follow that order.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the National Guard up in D.C. right now. I will guarantee you that a good half of the war don't want to be there. But when they put on the uniform, when they joined, they said, okay, we will follow the orders of the commander-in-chief.
Right. Right.
And it's going to take somebody of really strong backbone to push back on that.
Right. And we know from way back when we could never push you around.
Oh, sure, I could get wrapped around. Anybody could get wrapped around. But yeah, I'm a curious person. I'm always going to ask you why. And that doesn't go over in a lot of places. Doesn't go over in a lot of corporations, and they are.
Seeing that you were filing video reports about various different things related to the military, did you pitch your own concepts and ideas to your bosses, or were you assigned various different stories?
All the time. It was a mix. Some assignments I was given and I was dictated, you will do this. But many times those assignments were ones I would have chosen anyhow. But as time went on and I got more and more experience, I created contacts with different units. I knew different missions that were coming up. I wanted to be there to cover those missions because they were really, really interesting. They were different, and I would pitch them and try and get myself on the manifest as often as possible. And if I could do that, then it was so much easier to go to my boss and say, hey, they'll take me. Can I go?
Mm.
Yeah,
were there times that you were in war zones, or were they more stories that were kind of like semi-related to Department of Defense and the military?
The last 14 years of my career, I spent going back and forth between Afghanistan and Iraq. So definitely war zones. I would venture to say that I have got more blood on the field than Pete Hegseth. But I don't want to get into politics here. That would.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I've seen a lot of combat. I've spoken to a lot of soldiers who have been in combat. It was really, really interesting because in Iraq, I think that the troops quickly discovered that there were no weapons of mass destruction, and they were there for some other reason that never really quite got identified. And then they had to take down Saddam Hussein, which was kind of interesting because you go into Baghdad, you go anywhere in Iraq during those days, and there were big buildings covered with the pictures of Saddam Hussein.
Oh, yeah.
There were statues of Saddam Hussein. He was everywhere. He was on the money. He was on little pamphlets. People were petrified to say anything that was in the negative because they never knew when somebody with their face covered would come knocking on the door.
Right.
Take them away. I mean, those were the facts. But Iraq was interesting because we really did not know what we were going to do when we got there. And it took a couple years and a couple of different officials in charge of that whole situation to give us some sort of guidelines and to start achieving. And then once those guidelines were actually projected, there was progress that was made. But I think it was General Petraeus who did an interview once. And he says, okay, we're here. We won the war. Now what? Yeah, he got in trouble for that. But yeah.
What was he hinting at when he said that?
There's no exit plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's true of pretty much any war the United States has gone into. There's no exit plan.
Right. But they do have an objective most of the time. Whether they tell the citizens or not is another story.
Yeah, there'll be an objective, either hidden or stated. There'll be a goal. But once you achieve the goal, then what?
Mm-hmm.
That happened to us in Afghanistan. Our goal was it was the war against terrorism. And at one point, we were winning. We had the Taliban ousted. Al-Qaeda had left. The people were starting to look at Afghanistan as a nation where they could realize. And then there were changes on our political side. And we just kind of let them down, I think. That's my opinion.
Do you think that some of the objectives that we were never made aware of had to do with resources and oil and things like that, but they never told the American public?
Probably in Iraq.
Yeah.
Afghanistan has natural resources, but they do not have the infrastructure to get to those natural resources.
Right,
And
right.
so it would have been a huge investment to get some of those natural resources, the minerals, uh, the water. They not much oil to speak of, uh, but yeah, I mean they had some great resources. But first time when I went in there, they had I think two highways in a country that is pretty much the size of Texas.
Wow.
Yeah, with mountains, rivers, valleys, all of that. They were still, and to this day, they are still making their own bricks, little mud bricks that they build their homes out of. Power lines in the cities, but not outside the cities. Just it's not there. Gorgeous country, very hard country, and the people. I feel for them, especially the women.
Speaking of women, did you have women companions when you were out traveling, filing your video reports and security details and things like that?
Rarely. I I am what's known as in the TV biz they call them a one-man band. Because I'm a woman, I was a one-woman band. But that means I traveled by myself, took all my gear, I did my own shooting, my own editing, research, interviews, producing. Uh, I was responsible for the product. And there were, yeah, I think, two other women like that. But most of the females I ran into were correspondents, and they had a team behind them. They had a shooter, they had a producer, you
Yeah.
know, an editor, and they just chased the story. So yeah, it was a very uh, alone, yeah, not alone, but it was an unusual to see a woman out in the field outside the wire with
Did
the
it feel
troops.
uncomfortable for you?
Only a couple of times.
Hmm.
For the most part, I learned very quickly how to make it known that, don't harass me, don't hassle me. I mean, I learned that in Hollywood. So
Okay.
that kind of
You were
stuff
an old
just,
pro at protecting yourself.
yeah, it carried over for sure. Um, but yeah, that's even yeah,
So, because of all your work, you were able to be awarded many awards and accolades and things like that. Which of the awards that you were presented with during your career do you feel most proud of and why?
wow. Yeah, I have a lot of certificates and medals from the Department of Army and from DOD. The one I'm most proud of. Gosh, that's a good one.
Well,
The
name a
one,
couple then, if you can think of one specific.
well, I was given a, I don't know if you would call it a medal, an award, but it was a gift from an Iraqi general. And so you have to put yourself into the culture. In the Iraqi and in Afghan world, men are not supposed to talk to women that they are not married to or who aren't
Mm-hmm.
in their direct family. And of course, being an outsider, a Westerner, that made me kind of an infidel. But because I was a reporter, they were willing to bend the rules. And there was an Iraqi general that I came in contact with and had done interviews with multiple times during my trips there. And the last time I was there, he presented me with a gold plated jingle necklace and long earrings that he said I could wear at home for my husband to please him. I remember that was distinctive. Yeah. Officially, I think the Defense of Freedom awards that I've gotten are the ones that generate the most interest because those are tied to combat injuries. The first one out of Iraq was presented by then acting Secretary of the Army Les Brownlee, who is an incredible gentleman, very insightful and very thoughtful. of the people that work for him and put on the uniform and go out and serve the nation. And that I will always, he went out of his way to make that one happen. So
Mm-hmm.
that was pretty cool.
You know, you mentioned the Iraqi general a couple of minutes ago. Was he on our side, or was he actually an enemy
No, no, no.
of the United States?
No, no. He was on our side. Once we went in, we occupied Iraq. And after we got through occupying Iraq, we turned to nation building, I guess you could call it, within Iraq. Did the same thing in Afghanistan, trying to help people to establish their own government now that Saddam Hussein was gone, so that people could vote, people could have their own elected leaders, that they could take care of themselves. And the military was a big part of that. The big hurdle that they had was that they were known for the Republican Guard, which was a very nasty set of people who followed the directions of their dictator, their authoritarian leader, and they would go and kill people, jail people, destroy buildings, homes, villages, because the boss said do it. And so that left behind a very nasty, negative taste in the people for the military, for the uniforms. So one of the first jobs that they had to do, besides getting trained and ready to defend their borders, was to win the faith of the people. I think they've done a pretty good job from what I can understand, from what I'm hearing. We don't hear too much about Iraq these days, so which is kind of good.
You know, war is just, for me, I can't quite get it when you go in, you bomb the hell out of people, and then you try to do what we call nation building, which rarely seems to work because we're trying to instill our beliefs and our cultural style into other countries that are completely different. Can you recall too many places or any places that have been able to take to a nation building scenario?
They all initially take to it. Putting it into practice is where you run into the challenges.
Right.
Oh gosh, Afghanistan, the first couple of years that I was there, they were actually literally standing up an Afghan army. And many of the young men were coming from all over the nation to join because they wanted to build Afghanistan. Along the way, oh, by the way, by joining, they would also get an education because many of these Afghan people did not have education because the schools were demolished by the Taliban and in the Civil War that came before that. So the only people who could possibly read were the imams, or the people who read who went to madrasas up in Pakistan and learned to read the Quran. And so a lot of these guys, I mean, one of the first challenges that we had was teaching them how to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you gave them an order, go hit 10 bullets, they knew what 10. They knew what bullets were, but 10. Yeah. Teaching them how to drive cars. We gave them a lot of the little Toyota trucks so that they could get around. But teaching them how to drive, teaching that driving means you have to change the oil. You have to check the air pressure, which means think about that. Think about all the little measurements that you have to know how to read. So by coming and joining the Army, they were guaranteed at least a 3rd grade level education before they would be deployed out in combat.
Right, right.
So that was kind of an interesting culture. And you got the words you used there is right, is all cultural. It took many years, I think, before we, the Western forces, came to recognize that our culture is not their culture. And while we think something has to be done now, they'll get to it and they'll get it done, but they're going to go at their way that works best for their land, for their people, And so the cultural awareness was a big one.
Oh, yeah. See, you were doing a lot more than just filing video reports.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Oh,
It
yeah.
sounds like you were helping people with their day-to-day tasks and lives and things like that.
They were helping me. They were helping me. I spent there were a lot of interpreters who were not assigned to me. I had to come in on whatever unit's interpreter was out there, and it was their choice if they were going to work with me or not. I was media, I had a camera, and it was dangerous for them. It was dangerous for them to work for the Western forces
Mm-hmm.
because if the Taliban found out, they would probably not only try and kill the interpreter, but they would find out where he lived, go to his hometown, his village, kill his family, beat
Right.
up the kids, take everything. I mean, the stories of that happening were numerous. And so it was a very dangerous job. But most of them did it because they believed in the dream of Afghanistan, a country of their own. They believed in the dream that the Western forces, especially Americans, presented to them that there is a world where everyone is equal, everyone has a say. It doesn't matter what God you pray to, it doesn't matter the color of your skin. Everyone has a voice.
Yeah.
And I think that was the biggest dream that they bought into.
Gail, now that you're back on U.S. soil and you're not over there in the war zones and places like that, has your career shifted a little bit more into communication and representation of the media and other things?
Well, I retired in 2015 and I started my own little company and started picking up clients. Some of them were government subcontractors, but most of them were CDC and some folks over at Emory, which is a private university here. And I did a lot of work with the veterans, just to keep my hand in, stay in touch. And every story you do, you're sharing, you're doing a little bit of communication training because people want their story told and they want it told right. And if it's not a humanitarian crisis of which you have no control over anything, then people are going to, you know, I want this, the story I want told. How can I do it right? And you don't necessarily mean to, but I think every journalist, in the way that they ask questions, kind of leads the way. You know, why do you think it's so important that you do this? Same way you're asking questions. You guide the conversation. And in guiding that conversation, most people will pick up on it. They will put forth the messages that they want to put forth. I've done some media training a little bit with that, but I really still my passion is getting out with the camera and telling the stories.
I saw you filed a report fairly recently. What was that like?
Oh, you mean the one from the protest?
Yes.
Okay, so I never, ever, ever thought I would be going to protests. I was at the tail end of Vietnam, so it was pretty much gone by the
Hmm.
time I was cognizant, thinking anything about it, and never thought I would. I mean, for years I was a Republican, um, but what's going on now? You know that you are consciously leading us into the land of politics. Okay, you know
I
this.
know.
Okay,
I wish I wasn't.
that is. So I started going to protests here, and I've been to 9 so far. In the first one I went to, I was pretty well convinced that it would be maybe 10 people because nobody was going to say anything negative about the government. And I showed up, and lo and behold, there were 5,000 people, and they all felt the same way. They were
Hmm.
disgusted. They were upset. They were horrified. They were. disappointed. Everybody wanted the leader, and instead they were presented with some egotistical wannabe king. It just didn't work right. And so this last one was on Labor Day. And up until then, I've been taking my cell phone and just taking pictures, posting them on social media and stuff. This time I took the camera and I had a little microphone, and I purposely chose one of the smaller ones. This one was across the street from the Veterans Administration. And I was kind of surprised, and so I showed up, picked up the camera, and then just the signs are incredible. And then I saw a lot of older folks and younger folks. That was really nice to see the younger folks. And so I went up and I said, "Why are you here?" "What?" And I was kind of surprised at some of the answers. People don't trust the leadership right now. They want democracy back. They want the hatred to stop. They want people to know that everyone is welcome in America, because America is a land of immigrants. That the things that are going on right now are not appropriate. They are, and I feel that very strongly because all those men and women in uniform that I spent time with, they were so very proud of conveying American values to the people that they would come across, whether it was Eastern European countries after the wall came down, or whether it was in Africa, or Latin America, or Iraq, Afghanistan, Indonesia, Korea, Japan. We were Americans. We stood tall because we believed in honor and equality and the ability to live your life and be, if you worked hard, you could get ahead. Those kinds of things. And for a lot of these different cultures, it's a huge, huge change for them to even accept those concepts. And so I went to the Labor Day, got a few people talking to me, put it together, just a little 1-minute piece, and purposely stayed away from the highly inflammatory comments. Because that's, yes, I might agree with them, but they don't do any good.
Right. It kind of throws you off course. If you don't have a good communication strategy, those kind of comments won't help.
Yeah. And it's at the point where we need to start talking and listening, and instead of pointing fingers and, this is the bad guy, and that's the bad guy, and you did this and you did that. Okay, we are all trying to achieve life here in America. My life may not have the same boundaries as your life, but that's okay because this is America. It's a big land. We can handle it. We have for centuries. There's no reason So anyhow.
Do you think in this day and age, Gail, that there's room for more independent people like you who want to go out, file video reports, with structure and with heart and with soul to be able to make some sort of an impact on the way the world is?
Oh, I think it's happening already. On that first big one, I ran into a gentleman who was putting together on his own a documentary, and he was trying to find an outlet that would air it. And it was following the path of the people who were taking to the streets and asking the same questions. Why? Why? Yeah, but there's a lot of people that are out there. I mean, look on the Instagram, look on TikTok, look on Facebook, YouTube. There's a lot of people that are learning how to tell the stories. And there's also an element of folks who are slanting either side, right side, left side, can't get away from it. But there is a growing percentage of people that are just telling the story. Where has our country gone? You know, I thought America was great before the red hats came. So that kind of always mystified me. Why do we have to make America great again? It was already great.
Right,
And
right.
now we're an embarrassment. And
So
that's a shame.
if you were to take a look at the future of what you're going to be doing as far as accentuating stories that are going on, or doing the creative thing, where do you see yourself in the future?
I'm not sure. I've been trying to do some writing,
What
which
kind of
is
writing?
I'm trying to write a fiction story based on true events. Based on trying to pin it around the vehicle-borne IED incident that I was in Kandahar, and using that as an entryway that will allow me to tell some of the other stories and places I've been, which allowed me to see humanity at work, good and bad. So I'm trying that, but I've been working on that for a good 4 years now. And I get ahead, I get down, I send it to somebody. They say, well, try this. So I come back and I'll kind of rework it. And it's very different from writing for television, writing for print.
Oh, I can see why. Now, have you chosen fiction because it's a way to be able to take your real life experiences and be able to craft them in a more dramatic fashion?
Yeah, yine, yes, no, but also because I don't want to have to provide 50 pages of footnotes that verify the things that I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's fiction, I can make it up, but I'm trying to stick within the realm of what I know has happened
Right.
is and take it from there.
Well, that would be really exciting because I was thinking that your story, your real story, would make for a great memoir. But I can see why moving it into the fiction arena might benefit you too.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I think it's more fact than it is fiction.
Uh-huh.
But of course, I'm changing names, but some of the locations are there. Some of the actual events are there. Uh, we'll see. We'll see if it ever gets out the door.
Are you doing any training of people who are trying to get into the video world and understanding, how their cameras work and how to really craft a story on top of that?
Not since I worked with CDC. Yeah, at CDC, I had a contract with the Center for Global Health, and we had people that would come in for conferences from around the world. And at that point, all people had to work with were their smartphones. And
Mm-hmm.
so I would lead little classes on how to use your smartphone to capture different elements that you could put out on your web page, how to respond to an interview, how to conduct an interview, when to stop talking, when to just listen, when to push the point. I was fortunate in my training that I was able to go several times to the NPPA workshop, which is the National Press Photographers Association. And they had a video news workshop. And that's where I learned some of the basic concepts of there's a wide shot, a medium shot, a close shot. If you can, there's a closer shot that we see with our ears before we see with our eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're hearing audio and you can't get away from it, incorporate it into the story. That for every action, there's a reaction. That keep it human. And like Lieutenant General Honore would say is, don't ask the stupid questions. Don't be stupid, stupid. You know? So it's every story. And then you'll go out, you'll have a game plan before you arrive at an assignment, full well knowing that it's going to change as soon as you get there because something will be different or
Right.
something else will be introduced that you didn't expect or something wasn't there that you thought was going to be there. And so you have to be able to ad lib. But if you stick to those basic action, reaction, listen, watch, um, keep it simple, people will tell you the story that you want to hear.
Speaking of story, is there a topic or a story that sticks in your craw that you would really like to go after that's in your future?
Uh, I'm sure it's going to have something to do with the emergence of the American people, hopefully after the midterms, or who knows, maybe all of my talking is going to get me in trouble. I don't know. But yeah, nothing right now. Nothing right now.
Okay. We'll have to keep our ears peeled for you.
Yeah.
So, is there an ongoing strategy for you to be able to reach out and present yourself to businesses or people who might want to speak to you or hire you or that kind of thing?
Not as ambitious as I used to be.
I hear you on that one.
Yeah. My goal, if I'm going to pick up the camera and the gear and I'm going to put all the work into it, I have to learn something.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people get that, sometimes they don't. The last set of stories I did was with Emory University in the Guizetta School of Business. And they had set up a Master's of Business program for veterans. And so they let me sit in and capture B-roll and do some interviews with some of the students. And these are former military led squads and companies. I mean, 20 to 100 people. And now wanted to go work at a business. And American businesses, for the most part, do not understand that these are people that they're getting who've already gone through this evolution of being kids to being grown-ups to being organizers to being leaders. And that was very inspiring to see that. I really, really enjoyed that. And hopefully I'll have a chance to work with them again. There is, I'd like to do more work with women and the stance that they're taking. I'm not sure what shape that would take. I am trying to put together my first pop-up concert, hopefully, in the next couple of weeks with a lady that I met at the Atlanta airport when I was coming back from, I think I was coming back from Dubai on one of my trips. And I was getting ready to catch a connecting flight somewhere else. And she had been hired by the airport to play, to put people's nerves at ease. We've seen this pop up in some of the airports across the nation. And she's a cellist. And she played cello like I have never heard before. It is not your typical classical cello. She was just innovative, creative, energetic, passionate. And she was playing it like a guitar. And it was just phenomenal. And I stayed in touch with her. And it took 4 years, but I finally got back to her and we did a little story on her, which was kind of cool. And so she's been on a hiatus for about the last year and has now wants to come back. And so I'm reaching out to some people that I know to see if we can find the appropriate venue and try and do a pop-up concert.
Well, so you're going to be a concert promoter.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. I don't see it
That's
being
cool.
full-time, but I'll give it a shot.
Well, that would be a lot of fun, you know.
Yeah. I am also enjoying being a connector, a networker, if you will. I'm connecting people that I met from my years in the field to people that are here that want to do something. There's a connection of some sort, or neighbors that want to get involved in protests. I'm sharing information on that. Dogs. I love dogs.
Yeah.
So
How many do you have?
Just 2 right now. But I'm trying to get more involved in the Lifeline Animal Project that they have here that runs the animal services, going out and taking them out for a couple hours just to get them away from the kennels. and just delving in, delving
It's
in.
interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned dogs. I have a friend who creates recipes for dog foods that are going to be healthy without chemicals. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. There's a couple of companies here that are doing that. And we have been fortunate that we found a company, 15, 20 years ago now at one of the home shows that makes their own kibble without preservatives and without grains. And so we've been feeding our dogs that for the last 20 years, and
Mm-hmm.
they're extraordinarily healthy. So I feel pretty good about that.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Now, speaking of food, what have you eaten today?
I had a piece of bread and butter before I came down here.
Okay. Yeah,
Kept
it's not the most complex dish, but it's pretty delicious.
And I had some carrot juice. I drink carrot juice every day. That's kind of like my go-to for the energy boost. But I'm not a big eater. So on lunch, just like dinner at the end of the day. And when you first knew me, I was doing a catering business with our friend Rebecca.
Right.
I stopped cooking. I've got
Did you?
I've got like 2, 3 dishes that I'll make, but other than that, I let my husband Christopher do the cooking.
Is he pretty good in the kitchen?
He's great, and
Yeah?
he likes doing it. It's like we have an argument about the dishwasher. I want to use the dishwasher. He likes to wash the dishes by hand. I keep pointing out that uses more water, but he says that's okay. It's like no, it's not.
Is it true that men load dishwashers better than women?
Not mine. He will not load it. He won't. He
He's-
puts them in the sink.
He's a by-hand guy.
Yeah. Which is kind of interesting because I've printed out and I've shared with him all the articles that talk about how dishwashers use less water. They don't use that much electricity. They get the dishes cleaner, more sanitized, especially if you don't rinse them off before you put them in the dishwasher.
But
Did
then
you know
all
that?
the chunks of food, what are they going to do?
But there's a study out there
Uh-huh.
that shows that the technology behind the dishwashers is that they shoot out these like little lasers that bounce off the dishes, right?
Yeah.
And the strength of the laser, which determines the strength of the water, is based on the first piece of crust that they run into. So
Uh-huh.
if you rinse the dishes, then it's going to be minimal. And that's why sometimes you get dirty dishes after they come out of the dishwasher.
Right.
But if you leave the dishes, now I'm not saying don't scrape, but if you leave them unwashed in the dishwasher, when you wash the dishes, they will come out clear.
But then you're cleaning out your filter quite often.
You have to anyhow. So,
Right.
yeah, that's, to me, that's nothing. You just pick up a little basket and dump it.
This is great. The war of the sexes comes down to dishwashers.
Yes. Yeah, it does.
Wow. Well, Gail, thank you so much for joining me today on 50 Tastes of Grey.
Gosh, thank you. Has it been an hour already?
Well, it's close to it. Do you have a channel, or is there a way that people can kind of get a hold of you and watch you?
I do have Creative Media Matters. That's my company. And I am on Vimeo. And I have a YouTube channel, which I really haven't updated in a while. But for the most part, it's through the email, creativemediamatters@gmail.com.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining me. I hope that we'll be able to wash dishes together in the not too distant future.
And I'm so glad that technically everything worked this time.